Hey Summoners, welcome back to another Wild Rift video. My name is Avalon, and today we'll be going over the 6 best early game champions. These champions will be in no particular order, but they all possess insane strength over the early portion of the game and have the power to influence every game they play. If you like carrying in the early game, these are the champs for you. Let's get straight into it. Our first early game powerhouse we're going over today is Olaf the Berserker. He's quite broken right now and insane at all stages of the game. However, he's most powerful in the early game and has been running over the jungle and destroying the Baron lane. His chasedown potential is extremely oppressive for ranged Baron laners to deal with, and his melee dueling powers make him very hard to fight at all points. Olaf's first ability, Undertow, throws an axe at the target location, dealing quite reasonable damage and slowing all enemies it hits. It becomes an obnoxious ability once he picks up his axe, as the cooldown is reduced by 4.5 seconds. This means that if one Undertow lands, Olaf will charge into range, pick up his axe, and throw it again to slow you again. It deals considerable damage on its own, however the most devastating part is that it allows him to get into range to deliver his crazy DPS, and most importantly, his Reckless Swing, which does massive damage. You can't really run away either, as he just keeps slowing you with axes and forces you to fight or die. If you choose to stay and fight, you probably lose too. Olaf's second ability, Vicious Strikes, increases his attack speed, gives him physical vamp, and increases all of his healing based on how much health he's missing. This means that even if you get Olaf low, the battle is not yet won. His passive, Berserker's Rage, also increases his attack speed for how much health he's missing. Olaf will often live on the brink of death, attacking rapidly and regenerating just enough health to keep on fighting. To beat Olaf, you have to have healing reduction, and also enough damage to dispatch him quickly. This often means that the only way you can kill Olaf is by slamming him with most of your team, and that any duel you take against him, you are fated to lose. You can't even lock Olaf down. When he's rampaging in, he can activate Ragnarok to cleanse any CC and remain immune to CC for the entire duration. This means that you can't simply CC him and run away, you have to jump over walls and create immense space or be able to kill him. In the end, if you fight Olaf in melee range, he'll beat your head in, and if you try to kite him, you better hope you kill him before he starts beating on you and healing off of you. He's incredibly oppressive in the early game and definitely one of the best early game champions on the Wild Rift. Before we continue, make sure to join our Wild Rift Discord in the description below and subscribe to keep up with all updates relating to Wild Rift. The next champion we have for y'all today is Draven, the Glorious Executioner. While certainly not the best marksman on the Rift, Draven has a massive amount of early game damage, and his entire kit is built around dominating the early game and rolling into the mid game with enough attack damage to annihilate anyone who dares face his spinning axes. Draven's primary strength is the immense damage from his spinning axes, combined with a constant attack speed and movement speed buff of Blood Rush. When Draven has an axe ready, his auto attack is incredibly devastating, and no marksman can match him blow for blow. His short trades in the early game are immensely powerful, and often a lane phase can be won off of a few thrown axes. However, Draven truly becomes obscene in the early game when you can run forwards, tossing continuous spinning axes while using Blood Rush to keep them coming out fast, and catching them all so you can keep tossing them and resetting your cooldown on Blood Rush. If Draven can catch his axes, he's virtually unmatched in DPS except for niche situations like Jinx rockets hitting multiple people or bullet time raining down on entire teams. Spinning Axe is one of the strongest auto attack buffs in the game, and while the values on Blood Rush aren't that high, if you can keep the buff up the entire fight because you're catching axes, it provides you immense value. His damage in the early game is insane and should never be underestimated. Draven's third ability, Stand Aside, is also excellent in all-in situations. Being able to split up the enemy dragon lane, interrupt their channels, and just make them easier to hit is quite valuable. His ultimate, Whirling Death, is also extremely useful for bursting down enemies. And if you can time it correctly, hitting both parts of it will often remove almost half of a champion's health bar. Lastly, Draven's passive, League of Draven, gives him extra gold based on how many stacks of Adoration he has. This isn't particularly useful in the late game, as extra gold doesn't mean you can build any more items. However, if you kill someone in the early game, the extra gold will propel your build forward and often lead you snowballing out of control and absolutely dominating the entire game. Draven's burst and laning power is very high, and if he gets one kill, he can often take over the game with his extra gold. His primary weakness is being unable to catch axes due to the hectic nature of skirmishes and teamfights. However, in terms of raw early game power, Draven's right at top. Before we get into the rest of the video, our question of the day is, what champion do you think always loses lane? Every game somebody picks Nasus, I know there's going to be a Baron lane gap, but make sure to leave your answer in the comments below. We already spoke about Draven, but on the other side of the Wild Rift is the home of the other blood brother, Darius. Similarly to Draven, he's immensely powerful in the early game and tends to absolutely dominate in the laning phase. However, Darius is far less conditional and finds it easier to navigate teamfights. Darius's massive power comes from a few areas, and the first part of the kit that makes him strong is his crippling strike. Auto attack resets are quite powerful in the early game, and it is critical to his success that you abuse this as much as possible. Darius's auto, then crippling strike combo is quite smooth and applies 2 stacks of his passive, which is the next part of his kit that makes him so strong early. Darius's passive, Hemorrhage, causes his attacks and abilities to make the enemy bleed over time, dealing physical damage, stacking up to a cap. When Darius reaches the cap, Darius gains Noxian Might, gaining extra attack damage and dealing full stacks of Hemorrhage instead of 1. The extra attack damage is immense, and when Darius is fully stacked, he's virtually unbeatable in any fight. Darius is often known for 1v2ing early, as he can fully stack up his passive with his combo, slice through one enemy, and apply full stacks to the other enemies so he can chop them down with Noxian Guillotine. Its damage is increased for every stack of Hemorrhage on the enemy, so having Noxian Might allows you to deal insane damage very quickly. If it lands a killing blow, its cooldown is refreshed, so Darius can often rampage through entire teams if he's allowed to stack up. Darius's main weakness is being kited and crowd controlled. However, it's hard to do that in the early game, and even if carries are respectful of him in early skirmishes, he can stack up his Hemorrhage on a tank or frontliner, and then once he has Noxian Might, flash in with Decimate for huge bursts and finish him off with Noxian Guillotine. Darius is brutal in early game fights, and if you're looking for a pentakill machine, you should give him a try. Next up, we have Lee Sin, the Blind Monk. While he doesn't have the statistically incredible dueling champions like Olaf and Shyvana, he makes up for it with mobility and ganking ability. Lee Sin's dueling is not to be underestimated, however, and he can go toe-to-toe with the best of them. Safeguard Shield and the sustain from Iron Will combined, with the consistent damage output from his passive, Flurry, means that in any extended fight, Lee Sin will be getting huge value from his potent auto attacks. Lee Sin shines when comboing together with other strong early game champions to provide extra mobility and burst for finishing up kills together. Lee Sin is great at ganking and diving with a strong burst from Sonic Wave / Resonating Strike, and he can safeguard to get into range, dodge abilities, or escape from turret range. The slow on Cripple is also rather potent and helps him stay in range to keep delivering damage. When paired with champions like Fizz, Zed, and Akali, Lee Sin truly turns into another champion. He has the ability to follow their engages with Safeguard, add to the burst with Sonic Wave / Resonating Strike, and feed enemies toward them with Dragon's Rage. No other jungler in the early game is as good at facilitating aggressive teammates as Lee Sin, and a coordinated mid-jungle duo will often be able to dominate the map and relentlessly hunt down the enemy jungler. If you haven't already played Lee Sin in an incredibly proactive manner with a strong skirmishing mid laner, give it a try. The potential for risky dives and hard force 2v2s is incredible, and you could truly dominate the entire map. Our 5th best early game champion we have for you today is Miss Fortune. She's bonkers right now, and if you haven't already been spamming her, you should start. She's insanely impressive at all stages of the game, however, she primarily shines during the laning phase and in early game skirmishes and teamfights. Miss Fortune has some of the best short trades in the game, with Double Up doing immense damage to whoever you target, especially if they are hit by the bounce rather than the initial cast. When combined with an auto attack to apply Miss Fortune's passive, Love Tap, the damage truly becomes absurd. If you can perfect the combo of Double Up bounce into Love Tap auto, no marksman or support will be able to survive laning against you. In longer fights, you can use the attack speed from Strut to alternate auto attacks between enemy dragon laners, so that you're always proccing Love Tap for the insane damage that it deals. Miss Fortune's ultimate, Bullet Time, is one of the highest damaging abilities in the game. If an enemy receives the full duration of it, they will likely die, and it is absolutely devastating for anybody who hasn't been stacking heaps of armor. In the early game, you can use Make It Rain to slow enemies and help more bullets hit. However, if your support has crowd control and you could combo together to keep enemy dragon laners locked inside, they will simply melt away. Bullet Time is also incredibly powerful for the entire duration of the game. However, it's at its peak before the enemies can begin putting armor into their build. Early to mid-game fights can often be won by a well-placed Bullet Time. Miss Fortune's laning phase prowess is virtually unmatched, and her ability to single-handedly take over games with well-placed ultimates gives her the necessary agency to dominate and control the game. If you're a marksman player and you want the best chances of being able to take the lead, Miss Fortune is your pick. Last but certainly not least, we have Zed. While he doesn't have the strongest level 1 or 2, when Zed reaches level 3, he's quite scary to lane against, and dodging his shurikens becomes #1 priority. If Zed lands all of his abilities, you will be chunked down quite quickly. And if Zed can ever poke someone down to below half health, he can swap forward an auto attack to apply Contempt for the Weak, which deals immense damage. Once Zed reaches level 5 and unlocks Deathmark, he truly turns on and becomes an early game powerhouse. Most assassins become extremely powerful once they unlock their ultimate. However, not many have the ability to poke down the enemy laner from range before they begin their engage. Zed isn't reliant on his jungler helping him secure kills, and has enough agency to dominate his lane without relying on his team. Once Zed finds a kill or two, he becomes unstoppable. He's slippery, and a lot of his damage is AoE, so even when he's slipping through to take out the enemy marksman, he'll deal quite a lot of team-wide damage as he does so. If you want to skillfully outplay your enemies in the early game and look immensely stylish while doing it, Zed has the power to make it happen. So these are the best early champs now, but with more being released constantly, we may need to update this one every couple of months. Regardless, these will always be early game powerhouses, and if you're looking to cheese out some wins or control the early portion of the game, these champions will work for you. Thanks for watching, and make sure to like the video, sub to the channel, and answer our question of the day in the comments below. Good luck on the Wild Rift, and I'll see you next time.